Okay. All right. Well, good morning for me right now. I don't know what time of day it is for you, but we're gonna keep going from where we were when you left. So when you left the other day, we had been working on other types of inheritance. Remember, we did that case study where we looked at work from your fellow botany students, and they mixed some flowers together, and they expected them to be following Mendel's rules of having two alleles, having one that was dominant, one was recessive, and if one was dominant, it masked the recessive one, and to have the recessive trait, you had to have two alleles, two different types of uh, the same gene, and when they mix them together, first their red and white flowers come up as pink, and we call that incomplete dominance, right? And incomplete dominance is a mixture when you mix the two traits together. And then they like, well, we have these that for the snapdragons, we mix the red and the white ones together. We had pink. So if we take these camellia flowers and we mix them, then they will also be pink, but they weren't. They were actually red and white. We called that co-dominance. Okay, so both of these things, if you have heterozygous offspring, they have both colors expressed, but in different ways, right? Co-dominance, co means both. They're both there. Incomplete, the one trait is incompletely dominant over the other because the other one kind of gets shown because you mix it together. It's like mixing paint. So in this video, we're going to cover the other types of non-Mendelian inheritance, starting with sex-linked traits and polygenic traits. And of course, finishing off with my favorite, the epistatic genes. So remember, at any point, if you want to pause and take notes, you may do so. And in the comments below the video and that I attached this on, you feel free to ask any questions about filling notes or any questions you have at all. And myself and your peers, please feel free to answer these as we go on. All right, so we're going to skip past incomplete dominance. All right, that's a little review. So incomplete, some alleles are neither dominant or recessive, but when the organism is heterozygous, big R, little r, or big R, big W, the phenotype is a mix of both alleles, right? So they become pink. Here's a practice problem for you. All right, so this is incomplete dominance. Let me move my camera here. A white mouse crosses with a black mouse. The litter of baby mice are all gray. What type of inheritance does mouse color seem to follow? All right, so we could draw ourselves a Punnett square. I thought I could do that with this software. Now I don't remember how. Here it is. Okay, so we draw ourselves a Punnett square. All of them are gray. All right, so a good way to figure this out. Remember, you can pause if you feel you got this figured out. They had a black and a white mouse. Well, if they're gray, then they're obviously going to be BW. And they said all of them are BW. So that meant 100% of our Punnett square should be BWs. So then the parents have to be big B, and W, W. That's what the genotypes have to be because we've kind of reverse engineered this problem. But also, if all of the offspring are that, and we're already off right off the bat saying if the mice the mousies have this color, then this must be incomplete dominance, and in order for all of them to have it, and in order for these two to be black and this one to be white, then they have to be homozygous for their traits, whether it be black or white. Okay, let's move on to the next one. A white mouse crosses with a black mouse. The litter of baby mice are a mix of white and black. What type of inheritance does this mouse seem to follow? A mix. All right, if it's a mix, by a mix it means that they're both expressed. And the litter they have some are black and white and different spots. Maybe their head's black and their tail's white, but they're all mixed all over the place. So those are all, again, if we do our Punnett square, I'm not actually going to draw it this time. They're all showing both traits. So again, the parents, being black, being white, they have to have the genotype big B, and big W. All right, so let's see. Let's do our next practice problem. A white mouse crosses with a gray mouse. The litter of baby mice are a mix of white and gray. All right, so we have both white and we have gray. Some mice are gray, some mice are white. Well, we have our gray mouse again. This could maybe be a couple different types of inheritance. We could say it's incomplete dominance. So if they're mixed, if they're some are white and some are gray, then we would say that probably more than likely half of them are going to be white, gray, and half of them are going to be white. To get these genotypes, mama has to be, I don't know mama, but the white mouse has to be WW. And then in order for them to have gray and white, daddy mouse's genotype is going to be BW. But what if gray was dominant? Could that have occurred? And it was just gray and white. We don't know if there's a black mouse in this problem. They don't talk about a black mouse, so let's work that out. Looking at dominant and recessive. All right, so some of them are gray. They had a gray mouse and a white mouse. Let's see. We don't really know which color is dominant, so let's put this. We could go either way, right? I mean, the white can be dominant, or the gray can be dominant. If the gray were dominant, then dad would have to be heterozygous. Because if he were homozygous dominant, all his offspring would be what color? I'm thinking they would all be, if he was homozygous and mama was homozygous, they would have been gray. But since they all weren't gray, since we had both, I can't draw all over my face apparently. New software, sorry. Then this is not a possibility. But could have been if daddy was heterozygous or mommy is heterozygous, right? If white was dominant, then this would have worked out, because then some of them would have been gray being dominant, and the others being white because it's a recessive trait. Or if white was dominant, these this being the mom, the white mouse, their offspring being half white and half gray. All right, one more practice problem. A white mouse crosses with a black mouse. The litter of baby mice are a mix of black and white. What type of inheritance does the mouse color seem to follow? White mouse crosses with the black mouse. They're a mix of black and white. All right, again, this is co-dominance. Co-dominance, and we'd have to have the black and white mice. All right, so that's where we would talk about co-dominance. All right, in co-dominance, we of course have both alleles being expressed both equally. So we had the camellias as their example in our case study we did. You can see they have white and red petals, and sometimes a whole petal can be red and a whole petal can be white. It doesn't matter which. It's just kind of a shoot of which one they get. They pick one allele and they express that one. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Both phenotypes are expressed. They're both there. You can see that this flower had parents that were white and red. In our pink snapdragons, if we didn't know what the parents were, we could assume, well, the parents could have just been pink, right? We don't know whether the parents were both one red and one white, or if they were both pink, or if one was pink and one was white. Okay, we don't know that. But since we see both traits here, we know what the parents' genotypes were, right? They're not hidden, and they're not mixed. They're both there. So here, of course, is our camellia flower example. Okay, so just a reminder, the difference between co-dominance and incomplete dominance. All right, in the co-dominance, they're both equally present. That's not my handwriting. It's much too nice to be mine. By equally present, I mean they both are there. That you can tell this flower could be more red than white, but when we look at the offspring, it's not all red or all white. All right, and then of course in incomplete dominance we have a mixture. So these look like impatiens to me. So they mixed these white flowers and they cross them with red flowers, and if they turn out to be pink, it's incomplete dominance. Another example. Okay, so this is where we start talking about the question I posted yesterday about the karyotypes, other forms of inheritance. All right, and we're talking about sex-linked traits. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about the X and Y chromosome. Right? I asked you what the difference is between the X and the Y chromosome. Hopefully, a lot of you got, well, the X chromosome is a lot bigger than the Y chromosome. But what's the significance of that? You got to remember what is on each section of these chromosomes. Well, each of these little dark lines is a gene. So the longer the chromosome is, the more genes it's going to have, which means it can make more different types of proteins. Okay, so the Y chromosome does have genes on it. I mean, for some reason they do line up this way. Usually these dark lines are the genes, even though this whole thing is DNA. But this got, let's say this has 10 genes on it. Okay, well, if we go by the same length, if in the same length we have 10 genes here, well, then this one would have almost like 40 genes, because it's 4 times as long. And this creates some interesting statistics when we're looking at probabilities with these traits if they are located on the X chromosome. Because if the gene is down here on the X chromosome, the male only gets 1 copy, even though the female gets 2 copies to represent that. So when we look at them, when we look at sex-linked traits, we're looking at the traits that are on the X chromosome. And it creates some interesting problems. Since this Y chromosome is too small to hold many genes, the alleles of that gene are only found on the X chromosome, are expressed, even if 1 X chromosome is present, even if it's recessive. All right? Recessive, according to Gregor Mendel, claimed that we had to have how many alleles present in order to be expressed? 2. We had to have 2. But if this one over here does not have a gene, a dominant gene to mask it, okay, if the X chromosome has 1 recessive allele, it gets expressed no matter what is over here, because this one doesn't have any information. It's like coming prepared to a meeting. Okay, you and your partner were coming prepared, and you were going to have a debate in a meeting, and your partner only did this much research, and you did all of this research. Right? No matter what they had to say, okay, if you did research about water quality and they forgot to doing research about water quality, what you say is going to go right over what they say because they don't have anything to back it up. Same thing goes for these traits. Some examples of this. There's a bleeding disorder called hemophilia. It's an example of sex-linked traits, and we'll actually do some work with pedigrees this week when we look at that, and also color blindness. So I actually am interested in doing a colorblind test. So I will share a document with you, and I would like you to take the test, and you can see if you have color blindness. And when we look at populations, males tend to have both of these disorders more often than females. They're both recessively inherited. So why would they be more likely to be found in males? Scanning the room. Right, because males only have to have 1 copy, whereas females have to have 2 to have the recessive trait. All right, so we're looking at the whole karyotype. Karyotype is all of the chromosomes. Okay, these are all 46 chromosomes. Females have 2 X's, whereas males only have 1. And that creates some interesting things. One thing that it makes interesting is we're looking at cats. All right, this is a picture of my cat Zoe. All right, the reason that she has these different colorations on her face and all over her body is because the trait for the gene to express the trait for hair color is located on which chromosome, you think? I don't know, Mr. Bruning. We're talking about the X chromosome. We spent, I don't know how many minutes talking about the X chromosome. So probably the X chromosome. Yes, it's found on the X chromosome. And what happens is, since males don't have that second X chromosome, there would actually be a problem for humans if females had a whole extra X chromosome in every cell. So females, you do this awesome thing in order to avoid complications. Remember, having too much DNA can be a problem. It can cause complications. That's why our bodies go through meiosis. So females, they turn off one of them. And this process is called X chromosome inactivation. And so this chromosome kind of like shrivels up. And when it's shriveled up, it's called a bar body. But which one's shut off? The one you got from your dad or the one you got from your mom? When do they shut off? Do they shut off as soon as the egg and sperm combine? Or do they shut off after the cell is divided and the embryo is now 2 cells? Or when those 2 cells divided before? 8, 16, 32. It's actually at the 32 cell stage. At the 32 cell stage, the X chromosomes, one of them shuts off. And it's random. It's like the flip of a coin. Heads or tails. Which one's shutting off? Moms or dads? And so dad is colorblind. And in the female, her X chromosome with the recessive trait shuts off, then it's not going to be expressed. And so, like in our eyes, all these cells come from similar areas. All right. So it is possible that a female can be slightly color intolerant, where they have a difficult time telling colors apart. And that's because some of their cells have their dad's colorblind allele, whereas the most of their cells, the other cells, have mom's not colorblind allele. Kind of cool. Whereas males, okay, if you inherit your mom's a carrier of the trait. Mom's a carrier. It's a 50% probability that she is going to give you that allele. If she did, no matter what, you are going to have colorblind. You're going to be colorblind because you don't have a second extra chromosome to shut off. So in tortoiseshell cats, which is what Zoe's, it's not a breed. It's like a variation in all kinds of species of cats. Not species, breeds. The fur colors on the X chromosome and leaves the patches in different colors. And that's the activity I'm going to share with you today. That's what you're going to be doing. So it really is pretty cool. And even like siblings, these 3 are siblings, they can have completely entire different colorations depending on which traits they have. If they have alleles for white, brown, and black, okay, they can have all different colors of patches. And even like Zoe I feel is pretty unique because her face here on this side is all brown. This is more darker black, more darker brown, and then it switches. It switches down here on her chin, which is, I don't know, it's really unique. And so really that's the X chromosome. One of them does shut off, and it shrivels up. We think about a chromosome versus chromatin. Okay, which one of those do your cells use to create proteins? They use chromatin because it's unraveled. It's opened up, right? You open a book, you can read it. Book's closed, you can't read it. So once it's been opened and closed, then our bodies can use it. But if it's closed all the time, it's not useful. It can never be transcribed into protein, transcribed into RNA, translated into protein, excuse me. So that bar body, it's kind of like a chromosome that can never unravel. Okay, so we're actually going to do a couple practice problems with colorblindness, recessive and dominant, and then we're going to talk about the activity. All right, so let me get escape full screen. Okay, there it is. So I can get my little pen. Colorblindness, again, it's a recessive sex-linked trait. What's the probability that a colorblind man and a woman who isn't a carrier of the colorblind gene have a colorblind daughter? All right, so when we're doing these problems, we are again going to use the superscripts. So when we're doing the genotypes, okay, first we have to figure out whether they have an X and an X or an X and a Y. All right, so we got to remember males are XY. Okay, so X, Y. Females are not XY, they are XX. And you can do these practice problems on any scratch paper you have. Now we have to decide that second allele, colorblindness, or the allele found on the chromosome, right? So here are our chromosomes. Which one contains the allele? X chromosome or Y chromosome? The X chromosome, because it's bigger, right? So dad is colorblind. It's a recessive trait, therefore his letter should be lowercase. And we'll just use B's. I don't know, blindness. I don't know. You could also use C's for color. Whatever. Mom is not a carrier. Therefore, what is her genotype? Big B, big B. Now, you have to include the X and the Y when you're doing sex-linked traits. Because the probability matters. Okay, if you don't have X and Y, you just do B's, you're not going to get the true probabilities. I'll show you why in a second. So, what's the probability that they will have? What's the probability that they will have a colorblind daughter? All right, so if we were to draw these out, we'll do the capital first again, just like we did before. Should be typing it in there. That would work better. X, you have to bring everything, the big B and the X. Now, why didn't I draw a letter up here? Because the Y is too little. Duh. All right, so that makes this quicker. We just need the Y's. And then X, big B, X, big B. Okay, so what's the probability that on these problems, you got to read really carefully because we're going to ask about different sexes, different types of kids. We're going to have when they're born as a male, born as a female. All right, it says daughters. So that automatically eliminates half of this Punnett square. Why? Right, because those are born as sons. Okay, so therefore we don't even need to include them in our probability. So what's the probability that daughters are going to be colorblind? Goose egg, 0. Now, what if we hadn't used these X's and Y's? All right, what if we said, all right, well, dad is colorblind, so he has to have 2 little b's. And mom is not colorblind, so she's 2 big b's. Okay, so when we filled in our Punnett square, what's the probability that a daughter is going to be colorblind? Well, which one's the daughters? We don't know, right? We don't know. So since we don't know, we can't say anything. I mean, yeah, we can say, well, it's 0% because none of them have it. But we didn't look at the X and Y chromosome. Let's see another example. All right, let's look at another one where maybe that's a little more important. The X and the Y. A second here. Here we go. Okay, colorblindness. What's the probability that a colorblind woman and a non-colorblind man have a colorblind? Okay, first they're asking us about their son. Have a colorblind son. So let's see, colorblind woman. So what is her genotype? You can go ahead and fill it in. You can pause it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. All right, colorblind woman. So she's X little b. And a non-colorblind man. So his genotype, he's a male. So we need X's and a Y. Remember, we don't put anything here because the Y chromosome, it's teeny, teeny, tiny. It doesn't have the allele that dictates the shape of the cones and rods. I don't know exactly the schematics of it. Why they're colorblind. All right, so then we do that. Okay, so let's fill in our Punnett square. And you can pause and fast forward to double check your work. That's what I would challenge you to do as we're doing this new online learning. All right. Don't let me give you all the answers. All right. I would pause in class and I would make you talk to a classmate or think about it yourself. So make sure you're doing that in these videos. You can pause it and you can come back to it. Okay. So what's the probability they have a colorblind son? 100%, right? We don't look at this left half of the Punnett square at the moment. Why not? Because they're females. So in this case, we're not going to pay attention to the females because we're only looking at sons. But in the second part of the question, they said, well, what's the probability that they'll have a daughter who's a carrier? All right, that's where we would need to look at the side of the Punnett square. Well, 100% probability that they'll have a daughter with who's a carrier. Why are they a carrier? Because they have the recessive allele. But do they themselves have the recessive trait? No, they don't. They need to have 2 to have the recessive trait. like their mom. Okay, mom has 2 recessive alleles, therefore she has the recessive trait, being colorblind. She can't tell red from green, for example. And there's also different varying levels of colorblindness. Okay, I'm kind of simplifying it for the means of this example. So yeah, but let's see if the x and the y mattered in this problem, putting them in the Punnett square. We'll start over. All right, so this time I was like, well, I don't care about the X and Y chromosome because I'm stubborn. There's none of you like that. I know none of you are stubborn. I'm not stubborn either. Okay, so mom is colorblind. Dad, oops, ignore that, is not, but we don't know dad's genotype. He's not colorblind, so yeah, we'll say he's homozygous dominant because you don't have it. All right, so then we fill our Punnett square out. Well, what's the probability that the sons will be colorblind? You know, if you look at this Punnett square, what probability, how many squares have the recessive trait expressed? None of them. So we would say 0%, and that's not correct. Daughters, we would say, well, they're all carriers. Well, you might get that one right, but you wouldn't have got it right if you had done this. Then you would have said, well, only 50% are carriers, because what about the other 50%? What are they? They themselves are colorblind. All right, so those X and Y's matter. Okay, they matter. All right, so the activity I'm going to give you, if you miss coloring, all right, you just need some, if you want to give your little sibling something to do, they can color in for you. Or, anyways, it's extra practice. Remember, not required, but I think it's kind of a fun activity. We're going to look at cats. We're going to come back to the cat example. All right, so give me one second. I'm going to share this. I'm going to share these documents with you after a bit. All right, so background, we talked about the background, but in cats as in people, females are XX and males are XY. Do females get twice as many doses of genes on the X as males? No. In every cell of an embryo, one X chromosome is randomly shut off and stays shut off for the rest of the cell's life and the lives of its mitotic descendants. Mitotic descendants? What's that mean? Mitotic, where have we heard that? Mitosis. Okay, so mitosis. End result is 2 genetically identical cells. All right, so that cell, that one chromosome gets shut off as a bar body. It is a bar body for the rest of the cell's lives. All right, and when an X is turned off, so are all of its genes. Okay, shut down a computer, all the programs are shut off. All right, so the symbolism, we're going to show this in the cat. All right, so our cat figure has a genotype X and X. Now our B is going to represent brown fur, and the little b is going to represent orange fur. Now, what I would like you to do, just to be fun, is let's assume it's incomplete dominance, so we can have 3 colors in our cat. All right, so we're going to use 64 squares in the cat to represent the hair patches, cell patches descended from each of those 64 cells of the cat embryo that were present when the X inactivation occurred. All right, so there's a little asterisk here. It actually happens at the 32 cell stage embryo, but the cat would look boring if we only had 32, and I know you want to color more, so we're going to do that. All right, so then it says here, model which X chromosome and its genes were shut off in each cell by flipping a coin. And our model, heads, means that the big B was shut off. You'll also have this, okay? It means that the big B was shut off. Whereas leaving the little b to turn that patch of fur orange. Tails means that the X big B chromosome was shut off, leaving the big B allele to turn that patch fur brown. All right, we're going to fill out the table below, and before you color your cat. All right, I see now. Can we have incomplete dominance on this trait? Can we have a mixture of the 2 colors? No. Why not? Because one of them was shut off, right? We're always only going to have one. All right, so what I'm going to share with you is an editable document. All right, so right here you have the allele combination, you have the boxes. So like it said, you are going to need to flip a coin. I'm going to use a digital one just so you can see my results. Okay, so we have a new window. Coin flip. Coin flip. There it is. Thank you, Mother Google. Okay, flip the coin. Flipping. Heads. Heads. Heads means that which allele stays on? The big B. All right, so on this patch, we had, oh, I thought I had it set so you could just type into it. There it is. Okay, we have big B, and the little b is shut off. So what color are they? Brown. That patch is brown. So then what you're going to do is after you flip your coin to decide which one gets... Wait, am I doing this backwards? Okay, so if you flip heads, it means that the big B was shut off. I did that backwards. Okay, so the big B was shut off, therefore it is X little b. So they're not brown, it's orange. So then you would go to your cats, which I shared with you. It's on a presentation. All right, and you can do two things. All right, you can either print this off or you can edit these. These are all little squares that you can edit the color. So if you click on the square and you go up here to the fill color, you can then pick a color. Now here's the cool thing. All right, you can use whatever colors you want. You do not have to use orange and brown. You could use pink and purple. That's what Cora would pick, because pink and purple, that's her favorite color. You could use green and yellow, orange and red. Black and white would be boring, but again, not required, so you can do that if you want. Typically, it is brown and orange, right? So I'm going to stick with that. So I'm going to pick this orange, and that will color, should color. Oh, come on now. Yep, so it colored that part of that cat orange. All right, and so you go through and color each part as you flip coins. All right, so a really quick thing to do is to remember our cool thing where we could open 2 tabs at once. Well, heck, and then to have a real coin, or I don't know, you can do it however you want. But so flip coins. One thing that I know students have done in the past is they've just flipped them all at once, marked it, and then went back and colored the cat. And each of our cats should look different. So when you're all done, what I would like you to do is make your screen big, go full screen on your cat, take a screenshot of it, or if you decided to cut it out because you wanted to do some coloring, some therapy coloring because you're tired of being inside. Do that. Put on some relaxing music. Post a picture in the comments so we can see each other's cats. If you have any questions, again, feel free to comment on the video that I've posted. You can also send me an email. If you comment in the video, your peers can help you out. All right, it's not just me. And that might be helpful for everybody involved. So please keep coming back to the comment feeds and help your peers out. All right, I will talk to you all later. Peace out. I'll do a cat too, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, bye. My video stop.